You are significant. You have seeds of greatness inside of you. You are not on accident. You are on purpose. You are here for a very divine, special purpose. And we are going to talk in this podcast about evidence that you are significant. Last month, we talked about self love during the month of February, which I think was so appropriate. And this month, I want to talk about something related to the month of March, and I'm calling it March Mercies. So, and I think there is a link to what we talked about last month in that if we think about self-love as being like a pair of sunglasses or a pair of a certain color, maybe rose colored glasses that we put on. And self-love means having love for ourselves. And then as we do that, we can love others. And I think of that verse in the Bible every time that says, love your neighbor as yourself. So first, you have to love yourself, and then you'll be able to love other people. And we see this happen all the time where it just quickly becomes obvious someone doesn't love themselves, and then they don't treat us very well either, and they can't. And that helps me to have compassion when I see someone who really doesn't love themselves. They can't love me. And it reminds me of another truth, and that is that hurting people hurt people. And so with this theme this month of March Mercies, it's the idea of having mercy for myself. And the definition of mercy is compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. But instead of deciding to punish or harm, we decide I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to forgive. And I really didn't understand compassion until last year when I started the mastermind with Brooke Hemingway. And I just really felt like she was a compassionate person, is a compassionate person. And I started thinking about what compassion is. And she was teaching us some about even the definition of compassion, and that compassion, when you break it down, is passion with. And when we see the example of Christ having compassion, he was compassionate on people to the point that he was willing to die for them. And he had the ultimate kind of passion with. And so being willing to suffer for someone else like he did, that is like the most compassionate we could strive to be. And so when I think about mercy, and that definition includes compassion, I need to have compassion for myself before I can have compassion for someone else. And to me, that includes the idea of being willing to forgive myself when I make a mistake. And, like tonight, even for example, this feeling came up in me. My son Joe had a baseball practice, and normally they practice until 5:30. And the coach had sent out a message on Remind app that they were going to be done because it's raining and they couldn't practice outside at 4:45. And I didn't see that message. And Joe was so great. He took responsibility, and he was like, I didn't remind you it was going to be over early. And I was thinking to myself, well, I should have seen the message, so I start shooting myself and saying to myself, I should have seen that message and I didn't. And I start feeling like, was he waiting outside? It's raining, which makes it feel kind of cold. And I saw one of his coaches walking away as I pull up, and I'm thinking, did his coach have to wait on a Friday night with him? And, if I had seen the message early, he could have left 30 minutes ago. And I start going down this path where like guilt and fear sets in very quickly. And I had to think of this concept of having compassion for myself and having mercy on myself and being willing to forgive myself. I can't change it. I couldn't, rewind the tape, kind of like that movie Groundhog Day, if you ever saw it. Or the Tom Cruise movie where he's doing that thing over and over again, trying to kill the alien. But, where you can just go back in time and do it over and fix it. We can't do that. So what can I do going forward is I just have to forgive myself. And it's a decision. I have to decide, well, I can't change it and I'm not going to beat myself up, because if I start beating myself up, that's going to lead into behaviors that are not healthy. That leads into eating something I don't need to eat. For me, as you may have heard in another episode, I'm in recovery for emotional eating. I'm also in recovery for workaholic tendencies, where my identity is in, have I met my goal? And I think God's really been confirming for me in the last couple months that, like, He's keeping me humble on that. It's been amazing. I was able to go to Punta Cana because I earned that trip. And then it's like, boom, I'm going to reconfirm to you that your identity is in me, and it is not in accomplishing all the work goals that you want to happen. And so for me, being in recovery for a workaholic means having boundaries around work and having fun, taking time to get a shower, taking time to sleep, taking time to do something with my family without being on my phone, taking time to think about doing some things like do a jigsaw puzzle or go exercise, making sure I'm not skipping my exercise time. And also that not every goal I have is revolved around work. So confirming those things for me to have compassion on myself, it's like this cycle, right? Of I have to be willing to forgive myself. If I'm not, that's going to trigger me to emotional eat. It could trigger you to go shopping. It could trigger you to go drink too much. It could trigger you to go smoke too much. It could and somebody may say, wait, you said too much. You know what I mean? Unhealthy behaviors that we don't want to engage in. And I'm not judging anyone because I'm right there with you. But if I'm going to stay healthy and I'm going to set myself up to be fit, and I've been thinking a lot about this because, I lost my accounts on Facebook and Instagram, and I've had to be starting those over since Valentine's Day. And so Darlene Lee was taken in Instagram. So I added fit, FIT in between. So I'm Darlene Fitly, all one word, on Instagram. I was already Darlene Fitly on TikTok because I do little workout videos over there. I have a walking based fitness class where every day we walk and then I incorporate muscle movement. So we do push-ups. You can do them on the wall. You can do them on your knees. You can do them on a chair where you're a lot more vertical, but your hands are on the chair. So it's easier. The more vertical you are and the less horizontal you are, the less weight is on your arms. So it makes it easier. And so we do push-ups. We do squats, but you can do them without going real deep because my classes specialize in helping beginners to intermediate level. So your body will progress really quick. Once you get started, you'll get stronger. But a lot of older women are in my class because I do modify. I offer chair moves where you can be in the chair. And pretty much everything I teach, you can sit in a chair and do a chair version. So, getting back to forgiving ourselves and having compassion for yourself, even in exercise, where you're like, instead of being mad, I see this all the time in fitness where people are not willing to modify and honor their body. And so they sabotage their body. And I think a lot of times it's subconscious. It's not on a conscious level, but they push too hard, too long, and they get hurt. And then it's like, oh, I can't exercise because I'm hurt. And then they have to heal for 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and start over. And some people keep a cycle up of exercise, get hurt, and then eventually just give up and say, well, I just can't exercise. And it's like, no, if we approach exercise and do it out of mercy, have a merciful attitude, have a compassionate attitude, have a forgiving attitude, I think those three things are all tied together, then I'm going to push a little where I'm growing in my strength, but I'm not pushing so hard, so long that I'm going to get hurt. And so in my class, we walk, we do muscle groups 3 days a week. And so we do push-ups, squats on one day. We do your work focus on back another day and shoulders. And then the third day, we focus on triceps and hamstrings to work the back of the body. And then the fourth day is walking with standing ab work. So walking, and that would be core strengthening. So it is so fun. I love movement. I love the music. I love helping other people have fun. And sometimes I teach fitness at our Tops Club that's here where I live in Athens. And it is so fun to work out. I also meet people at the rec center and we'll go walk. And so that's my Instagram handle and my TikTok handle. I'm still, Darlene Lee was available on Facebook. It was Darlene H. Lee, and now it's Darlene Lee. And so having compassion, even when I got hacked, I had mercy. And really, God has been laying on my heart this month to program in peace. And we were talking about this at Recovery Through Christ, our recovery ministry that meets on Thursday night. And we were talking about, the idea of having compassion. And so there's so many areas where compassion overlaps and we can see the need for it in our life. And really in every single area. One area that I've been struggling in lately is emotional eating has a whole lot of layers to it. And so I have recovery in emotional eating like in the daytime. But when my mom passed away, February 22, somewhere along in there, I relapsed. If I really didn't stick with not eating at night. And it's not that I'm necessarily eating unhealthy things. I think by and large, I'm eating healthier versions of food. But if you're eating at the wrong time, if I'm eating, I want to make it an I, me statement. And that's what we practice in recovery. If I'm eating at the wrong time of night, then I'm going to put on pounds. And so I can even be eating healthy foods, salad with salad dressing. Well, that's fats. I don't need to be eating that at night. Fats are good, but fats are fuel. And if I'm going to eat fuel and then go to bed, my body's going to have to store it. I'm setting myself up for my body to need to store it. And again, no judgment. I'm just sharing with you what I've been struggling with. And so I I really wasn't motivated to work on it. I just kind of gave up and was like, I'm just not going to think about it. I'm just going to accept myself for right here. And I think there's seasons to do that, because I was, adjusting to my mom passing away. I would say grieve. I have grieved, but I'm still, and if you followed me on Facebook a long time, where I do a story journaling in the stories every day, most every day, then you've seen where, I went live the day that I went to the hospital, and we had to say goodbye. And yes, that's sad. It is really sad. But I knew my mom was going to be free of a body that wasn't serving her. And she had been in that body for a long time, sick and in more and more pain, and in more and more it failing her more and more. And so I just have such a clear vision of my mom free of that body and in heaven with Jesus. And that's who she always wanted to be with. That's who she was living for. And I just know she is happy, and she's not suffering in this body that was. She was in pain. She had Guillain-Barré, which is a nerve disease that makes your nerves burn, and her feet would burn, her legs would burn. If you burn your finger on the stove, you put ice on it, and you hope it'll stop as soon as possible. Having a nerve disease where there's burning and it doesn't stop, that is an awful way to have to live. And so my heart goes out to those of you who have nerve diseases, because that is a lot of pain. And so my mom was always committed to, she had a super high pain tolerance, and she was always using natural things. And my mom was a really, she was full of mercy. She was very compassionate, very forgiving, and she had such a positive attitude her whole life. And she was sick my whole life. So I can remember being 5 years old and her laying on the couch with severe anemia. And I didn't know what was wrong exactly, but she just said, I can't play with you today. I'm going to have to rest. And so I just, I can remember playing and mom resting when I was 5. So, for me, I'm so thankful I had a mom that did have a positive attitude and was a compassionate, merciful, forgiving person. And being this kind of way, and putting on the glasses, we've put on the glasses of self-love in February, and now we're putting on these other glasses of mercy, and having self-mercy in the month of March and focusing on that, I think is going to be so freeing. And when we look at all the love-based emotions, freedom is the highest love-based emotion. And when we forgive and we let go of our anger and we forgive someone, it doesn't mean what they did was right. It doesn't even mean they're off the hook with God, but it means I gave it to Him. I'm not holding whatever it is against them. I'm leaving it between them and God. And I can let go of any bitterness, any resentment. I don't have to replay in my mind ever again what they did. I can forget it. I can literally let it go and forget it. And I'm so grateful that for me, this comes pretty natural. I laugh because, sometimes I wish I remembered things better, but I think some of that is, the years of being a codependent. Being easy to forgive is a gift that God blessed my life with. And, narcissism comes from childhood trauma. The brain has too much cortisol, and that cortisol chemically changes that child, and they grow up and their brain chemically is narcissistic. And Rebecca Zung was one of our guest speakers at Align this year, and the question was asked to her in our VIP workshop, can a narcissist change? And she just emphatically said no. I believe that God is able to do great works in people and that people can change because if it's His will, I believe our DNA, I already know our DNA heals, and I'm not claiming any kind of medical advice. This is just my opinions and my opinions from what I believe I've seen in people I know. But our DNA can heal, and our cells are really smart, and there's herbs and oils and things on that God has put on the planet that work with our cells and they can heal. And so I believe a narcissist can heal, but I believe many times narcissists don't want to heal. They would have to want it. I do believe that our prayers are like a bridge, a thin, thin thread, kind of like when you look at a spider's web and there's this thin thread, but it's very strong. And our prayers are like that, and they can be the bridge between where someone is that's sick, either mentally or physically, emotionally or spiritually, and bridge over to where they could be very happy, they could be whole, they could be healed, they could be forgiven, and completely well in every single way. And so prayer is so, so powerful. And in order to have self mercy and self compassion, I think prayer is one of the first places to start, is to just say, Dear God, please forgive me, and please help me to forgive myself for what I did that I feel I did wrong and I can't change it. And we can be specific. God already knows, and He wants us to take time with Him. He wants us to be specific with Him. He wants us to ask. And He loves when we come to Him and talk to Him. And so as we do that for ourselves, then we can extend that same kind of mercy to others. And just think about that for a minute. If I will forgive myself, for example, being late to pick up Joe, what if I wouldn't forgive myself tonight? I'm recording this podcast at night. What if I was still mad at myself and so upset? What if I found out he had been standing there 45 minutes in the cold and the rain, and the coach had been standing there with him, which, by the way, the coach wasn't. It was just a coincidence that I asked Joe, and he was like, oh no, he was just walking to his car. And I was like, well, I'm glad I don't have to forgive myself of that. That was just a coincidence. But what if he had? And what if I came home and I was like, inside so upset? And my reaction would be, I would really struggle to not start a little binge of snacks. And so instead of that, there's some things that I do to extend myself mercy. Number one, I forgive myself. And then I can pray and ask God to help me forgive myself, because the devil is not going to want me to forget. He's going to want me to think of it and then think of it and then think of it again. And he's going to want to torture me with it. And so by forgiving myself and saying, you know what, I can't change it, I can just move forward. So I would apologize to Joe. I'm so sorry you were out in the rain and I didn't know practice was let out early. I would try to apologize to that coach and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I didn't see that message and I didn't come on time. I would journal in my journal. And in recovery, we've learned 5 questions. And I have this on another episode, but just in review here for this episode, who did it? Me. What did I do? I was late. I didn't pick up Joe. It was out in the cold. And then How did that make me feel? I felt so bad, guilty, like a bad mom, like irresponsible. That can tap into people pleasing. What are people going to think? You know, all of those kind of guilt again for that. So, and then the fourth question is, what's the damage? And the damage could be self-harm in the form of, binging, or just mentally reliving it and being mad at myself. And so the damage um, could be different things, right? It just depends. It might be getting angry and driving too fast, or yelling at my son, or blaming him some way. Like, you should have told me that your practice was out early, and it's not his fault, because being self-compassionate and self-merciful allows me to not blame others. It helps me to take responsibility, so that then I can forgive myself. And because I can forgive myself, I can take the blame. So I grew up in a family where I think one of my parents didn't want to take the blame, because he grew up in a family where if you took the blame, there wasn't forgiveness. That's just my supposition from, it may not be true, but that's my supposition from what I saw in him growing up. And so, if I can't forgive myself, then I can't ever take the blame. It always has to be someone else's fault or some circumstance's fault. I'll fight tooth and nail that it wasn't me. I didn't do it. It wasn't my fault. But if I'm able to forgive myself, even if other people won't, even if the coach was mad or Joe was mad, if I was like, I can't change it, I've already apologized. And I told him, Joe, I'm sorry. I messed up. I'm so sorry. I told the coach, I'm sorry. What if the coach was mad? I'm sorry. Yes, I should have seen the message. If I will forgive myself, even if they have blame for me, I've had this happen actually recently, where two people were saying I said something in front of a group that it's not what I intended. I did not mean for that meaning to come across. And I didn't think I said it, but I apologized anyway. And I said, I'm sorry that meaning came across. And they proceeded to repeat themselves several times. Like, instead of saying, you're forgiven, it's okay, we all make mistakes. Nope. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. It became like a gaslighting situation. And I finally said, I've already apologized 3 times. And if that's all there is, then I'm going to leave. And at that point, the conversation started to shift. And I think in codependency, sometimes it can be difficult to know, like, how should I respond if someone else is not showing me any mercy? And in the next episode, I really want to talk about how to deal with others. But in this episode, we're focusing on ourselves. But if someone else is coming at me and they're not hearing me and they're not acknowledging my apology, if I have forgiven myself, then I am equipped to be strong and to protect myself by excusing myself from the situation. It opens my mind, and it will open your mind to see the way of escape. God promises that in every trial, He is going to, in every temptation, He's going to provide a way of escape. And so often when we look in codependency, because of the abuse and the gaslighting and the narcissistic behavior that often happens, we become blinded to the way of escape and how to get out. But there is a way to get out. And I think part of what happens too is we lose our strength, because the narcissist convinces us it's my fault. It's, if you had just said the words the right way, then your apology would have been accepted, but you don't have the right tone, and things like that. And that's gaslighting. And so that isn't, they shouldn't treat you that way, that they're not treating you with love and respect. And so, you don't have to continue to apologize and try to change your tone. You can't affect how they hear you. That isn't, on you. If you are being kind and you've said, I'm sorry, and taken responsibility for your part, if you had guilt and you apologized, you did your part. And so sometimes it's okay if you want to record the conversation. I've done that before where I've said, you know what, I'm going to hit record on my phone because I think that would be helpful in this situation. And it's amazing sometimes how things will change if you put a phone on the table and you're recording. And the person who's narcissistic may not allow you to do that. And they may be like, no, and try to grab it. But oftentimes, I think there's so much pride that they're like, I'm not afraid, go ahead. And it is helpful to go back and listen and say, you know what? Either I do need to make amends that there was a part where maybe I started repeating myself and I needed to just let it go. And when you've lived with narcissism a long time, that can happen because the narcissist required you to repeat yourself a lot. So just learning to say what you have to say one time, because you do have self-mercy, you have self-compassion, you have self-forgiveness, and that those qualities are not based on their response, the other person's response to you. And so as you practice this, you will get stronger and stronger to be able to stand on your own, not by your own strength. For me, being a Christian, I know I'm standing in God's strength, but that strength He's giving me is getting stronger and stronger with every time that I handle this situation the right way. And it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And so that can happen in a work situation. I've actually, Rebecca Zung was talking, but I've heard people talk about narcissism in a work relationship. It can happen in a school relationship, student teacher. It can happen with a customer being the narcissist and coming to you and saying, I'm just not happy. And oh, that can be so triggering, right? When you really want your customer to be happy, and oftentimes that same customer has made it really hard to be happy. They've asked you to do things nobody else asked you to do, but they are asking you to do it. Those are warning signs that you probably have a customer that is narcissistic, and to really start from the front, set some boundaries that you're not going to allow yourself as a provider to be treated that way. So at one point I was talking about, I think there's more and more people who are narcissistic because it starts in childhood with elevated cortisol levels, and then their brain is changed. And I think that's coming from the amount of stress in our society today. And kids are under more and more stress. And so you have more and more adults developing out of that childhood into adulthood who are narcissistic. And so we have to develop these skills where we understand self-compassion, self-mercy, and then offer self-forgiveness so that it's not dependent on the other person to give it to us in order for me to have what I need. And then I'm empowered to move forward in the situation in a healthy way. Thank you for listening to You Are Significant. Please leave us a review. Please leave comments, give us a like, and share this out. We appreciate you here on You Are Significant, and I cannot wait Till next time to spend time with you.